Is there anybody that would like to speak for or against the rezone? Hearing none, public hearing adjourned. Those are the ones you like.
Mm-hmm.
First one, that's the first one.
I was just gonna say that.
First
That's
one
your
since
first
I've
one
been-
you've had.
I didn't
Well
even
done.
screw it up.
No, not too bad.
Give me a chance. I'll screw up something else eventually. Just give me a chance.
Well, John, please do, because I got $3 that says you are, so.
What's the night?
the
What's
under-
the Good evening and welcome to the May 5th regular session of Findlay City Council. I'd like to start with the roll call.
Mr. Greeno,
Here?
Mr. Haas,
Here.
Mr. Hellman,
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Here.
Mr. Palmer,
Here.
Mr. Russell,
Here.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Here.
Mr. Slough,
Here.
Ms. Warnicki,
Here.
and Mr. Wobser.
Present.
We'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Mr. Russell, do we have any, I'm sorry. I'll take a motion to accept the previous council meeting minutes. Mr. Slough.
I move to approve the minutes of the April 25th, April 21st regular session of council.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
We have a plethora of add-ons, replacements, and removals. In a form of a motion, I would say we want to add on a letter from AEP concerning COVID-19 rates and written communications. We want to add an email and attachment from Mayor
Mern into the reports of municipal officers and municipal departments. We want to add a letter from Service Director Acting City Engineer Thomas concerning the CARES Act and the Findlay Airport. We want to add a letter from Mayor Mern waiving concerning the waiving of sidewalk cafe permit fees into the reports of municipal officers and municipal departments. We would like to add on ordinance 2020-050, the CARES Act, concerning the Findlay Airport. For replacements in resolution 014-2020, we would like to add a line item onto Exhibit A, which is a Tyler's Technology voucher. And lastly, we would like to remove two items, a letter from Service Director Acting City Engineer Thomas concerning the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Nature Works grants and the corresponding ordinance 2020-049 concerning that ODNR Nature Works grants. And that's all in the form of a motion.
Second, Mr. Slough. Any discussion? Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of Mr. Russell's motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Russell. This evening we have no proclamations, no recognition or retirement resolutions. We have no oral communications, no petitions, and no written communications. Reports of municipal officers and municipal departments.
We have an add-on written communication.
I'm sorry, the written communication was the AEP letter,
Yes, sir.
and that was added to your packages as information that was received by myself in the council office. And so that's more in case somebody would call and ask you. You now have the 40-page letter that they sent us, and you can reference that as needed. Reports of municipal officers and municipal departments.
Revised agenda for City Planning Commission meeting for May 14th, 2020.
Questions or comments? Agenda to be filed.
Letter from Service Director Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding runway 725 rehab 35293200 and rehabilitate taxiway A 35293400.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Director Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding Bright Road Pump Station.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding additional public parking. Sorry, KPIs first. First quarter of KPIs.
Questions or comments about the KPI? Hearing none. Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding additional public parking.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding City of Findlay operations budget.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
In looking through the document, specifically concerning the city council budget, there are, I noticed that as of right now, we haven't revised our budget any direction. I look at it and there's a lot of areas where we could also make some savings, and I was wondering, John, or President Harrington, how we would want to look at trimming our budget, specifically things like professional services in light of us, light of council deciding not to go forward with strategic planning and some other endeavors. I think we could revisit this and trim our budget also. Is there a process you'd like us to work with?
Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. If you as a member or you as a council have specific recommendations you'd like to make to the mayor, you could do so in writing and they can take those. We could also form a ad hoc committee and come with a committee report based on any recommendations that committee would come forth with. Or you could just leave it as is with the understanding that those amounts as unused would then carry over eventually as unused amounts. Those would be the three recommendations that I can think of off the top of my head. I'd leave that up to you as council to decide which, if any, of those you'd like to do. So looking for comments from our mayor if she has any.
I'm happy to comment. It's up to you guys. Certainly, I think it would be prudent for us to go through, as you mentioned, with strategic planning, determining not to move forward. Certainly, that's an area we can cut back some funds, but I think it would be wise. If you would like, I can work with Council President Harrington and the clerk to make some recommendations and send that back out to you for review. It's up to you all.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Station.
Thank you. I have a couple comments regarding that. Traditionally, you'll go to appropriations, and the appropriations committee would discuss the budget and potential changes to the budget and whatnot. You may or may not be aware today the state, it's becoming more and more public, thinks they're looking at a $3 billion budget hole. And that means your local government funds as well as some other state subsidies will be looked at pretty hard. Initially, and I have been working with Mr. Wolfster in the background, talking with him on a regular basis. We've talked, and initially in my calculations of the revenue, I was going to take a 20% haircut off the state reimbursements based on the situation they're in. Reevaluating that now, $3 billion is comparative to the budget deficit the state looked at when the Kasich administration took office, and they had to do some pretty dramatic things to balance those budgets back then. So I may revise that haircut up on the state revenue, so I wanted to let you know that. There's a little bit of a bright spot, if you can see that in all of this, and that's your city income tax. The federal government, and the push they did through the CARES Act to protect payroll, we have not seen the drop in the W-2 income, the withholding income that we saw during the recession. I attribute a large portion of that to the fact that companies are being incentivized not to lay off their people or fire them, but to keep them with the hope or the promise that those salaries may be fully reimbursed. If that's the case, they found a new way to provide unemployment benefits in a way that incentivizes not only the individuals and the companies, but to benefit local governments in Ohio that live out the income tax. So that's a nice bright spot that we're looking at here today. The downside is, as you know, a lot of people are working from home. There's been a number of lawsuits filed now. The way our revenue works, you're going to have to be very patient, and we're going to have to monitor carefully what happens with the income tax, because a lot of it will be collected that, depending on the outcome of the court cases, may be subject to refunds in the next calendar year. So your revenue may end up looking larger this year than expected. The flip side is, though, if these court cases move forward and the plaintiffs win, you could end up with a lot less revenue through the refund process next year. So that's going on as well. And that's kind of where I'm at. Does anybody have any quick questions for me, or let you go?
Mr. Russell?
Are the court cases related to people paying income tax where they would normally be driving into Findlay and working here and getting charged 1%? Now, because they're staying in Perrysburg and not driving in, they don't think there's not a need to pay the 1% to Findlay?
That's exactly what's going on, but the 1% is being paid. In other words, corporations are paying it based on the brick and mortar. In other words, it's a brick and mortar rule. It's kind of what the legislatures referred to it down in Columbus. Wherever you worked in a brick and mortar facility is who's going to pay the tax. And the court cases specifically are about whether or not you're going to be due a refund if you can show that you work from home, you didn't work from that brick and mortar facility. So we have some risk, but again, it's early in that, and I'm optimistic. There's, like I say, through the federal responses, there's been some positiveness there. So we're still going to see a hit. I'm still looking at major hits in municipal court and some other areas that'll impact your general fund, and I'm hoping to wrap up these numbers quickly, and working with the administration. They're going to set some stuff over to me that'll help me wrap things up.
Mr. Wobser? You had your hand up.
Oh, no, I was just
I'm sorry. Okay,
pointing at
go ahead, Mr. Russell.
Not for Mr. Stasiak, just another question on the reports. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, go ahead.
Mayor, on the third page, you have the updated 2020 City of Findlay operational budget, and I noticed that most of the departments have taken cuts, but some of them have not. Ones that are still showing it with no change is auditor's office, treasurer's office, law director, muni court, civil service, planning and zoning, and then with a small budget of $27,000 reservoir recreation organization. So a lot of those are obviously other elected officials. Are there discussions going on with those folks, and they just haven't gotten numbers back, or what's the status on those areas?
Correct. I can't speak for each of them and what cuts they'll recommend. This was just wanting to get this as a starting point. Certainly we'll continue to evaluate, and I would expect that municipal court, the auditor's office, those various offices will also make some updates for your review, and they can certainly comment on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Station.
It's a technicality, but I think it's an important one. None of the budgets have been cut. You have fully appropriated this budget, and as you have done in past years, the way you're approaching the budget is that you're leaving it to the administration and the department heads not to spend what you've given them. So in terms of where you're at, don't kid yourselves. None of the budget has been cut from a technical point of view, or the ability of the administration or any other department, myself included, with the auditor's office, to spend to the full extent that your budgets read. That being said, I'm sure every department and every elected official is looking closely, and it would be unusual for there to be the kind of conversations that you've asked if they're going on, Mr. Russell. The process should be the individual departments, from an elected point of view, the auditor's office, the courts, civil service, this body, should make a decision, you through appropriations, me through our office and our process. Then should you want de-appropriations, those de-appropriations should be brought to this body, either in legislative format or in committee request format, and then those de-appropriations passed, and then at that point you have budget cuts. In the in-between time, it would be again unusual for whether it be the courts or civil service or anyone else to come to this body and do it in the manner you propose. So ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen, but I want to make sure that it's clear. No budgets have been cut at this point from a technical legislative point of view.
Mr. Wobser.
Following up on what Jim said, I guess, Mayor, would you, would you rather have this written up in legislation yourself, or do you want to run this through appropriations and then we'll take care of doing the legislation that way?
So I know that the auditor and you and I spoke last week a bit, and the auditor, mentioned that as we get the updated revenue projections and he has to file his new report, we will need to then take action because we have certain legal requirements and what we are allowed to submit. So at this point, we aren't requesting any de-appropriations. I think this is the plan, as I communicated. This is the plan, this is our strategy, and then as we kind of move through, then we can start making de-appropriations as necessary. At this point, I think we need a little more time to kind of figure out what that needs to look like. But then we'll come back to this group when we have a more solid plan on that.
Have you had any specific conversations with the Muni Court and the other folks that have zeros on here? Do we need to take care of that?
I know municipal court is working on it. I think speaking with them later this week just to kind of talk through what their operations look like, and obviously their operations are mandated by the state at this point, kind of who they can see, how they can have, so they wanted to kind of have a better plan in place on that. With the other officers, I think they all probably hear us right now. Certainly I'll follow up with them and let us know, but I know they'll submit that to the auditor's office and it'll get updated in Munis when appropriate. But it doesn't hurt for you all to follow up and say you noticed as well.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Director, Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding CARES Act grant offer for Findlay Airport.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell?
You're already coming out. Good for you. Brian, please explain.
All right, through the CARES Act, there were funds that were set aside to assist airports. We knew it was going to happen, but we didn't know how much or when it was going to happen. I received an email yesterday afternoon from the FAA. The amount that we're allowed is based on the size of the airport, whether you're a regional airport, an international airport, that sort of deal. So we're allowed, or they're offering up to $69,000 for the airport. For us to do that, I need authorization from council to sign the agreement to accept the funds. The requirement is, I got the email yesterday afternoon. It has to be signed and returned to them by May 18th, which is before your next council meeting. So that's why I added that on as an add-on, and I am asking that you consider suspending the rules and giving it all 3 readings tonight. Those funds can be used to offset payroll, utility bills, if there's debt service, anything like that. So it's basically, it'll be set up like a project. We get it, we accept it, they'll put it there. We'll take our revenue reports, or our payroll reports or whatever we need, upload it, they'll electronically give us the money, and we can do that through the year until we use up the $69,000. So it's no money from us. Basically, it's taking documentation that we've already had, and we get reimbursed for some of the employees' works out there and the utility bills and stuff that's going on.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding the waiving of sidewalk cafe permit fees.
Question or comments? Mr. Wobson?
Mayor, are you still going to require the permit to be submitted?
Yes, so as my letter stated, what I'm proposing is that they would still have to follow all the permitting, application, all the rules and regulations associated with having the sidewalk cafe permit. However, we would not charge them the $200 fee or the $50 fee respectively to be able to do so. Obviously, in light of coronavirus and the regulations they're currently experiencing, and we expect to continue to limit their indoor dining, we want to make sure that we're giving our businesses downtown and across the community the best leg up that we can to be able to continue to serve our community and make revenues and be able to be here long term.
How much money did we take in this last year?
You know what, I did not look at that. I can certainly let you know. I don't think with the number of businesses, I'm sure it was probably under a couple $1,000.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Mr. Russell?
Is this something that you can just do, or does this require council action?
It's the understanding of the law director, the opinion of the law director, that I do not need council approval. However, I think it would be beneficial for you all to show your support in business. And I don't know if we can just kind of have a show of hands to show the support of council.
I'd make a motion that the council support the mayor in this effort to reduce the fees on our restaurants by waiving the sidewalk cafe permit fees for the calendar year 2020.
Second, everybody? No, sorry. Mr. Haas, second. Any questions or comments, additional questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of supporting the mayor's effort on this behalf, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Mayor, you have your
Thank you.
approval.
I will share this with the businesses. I know the DFID is meeting tomorrow, and I'll make sure to show them that you all supported it unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, no more letters, committee reports.
The Strategic Planning Committee met on April 21st, 2020 to discuss the city's general fund. We recommend the following: discussion of new scope of work draft that will be sent back to Baker Tilly. Tom concerned with lack of brick and mortar projects. However, this is covered in Article 5. Mayor concerns with using BT for the financial, would prefer to work more on economic development. Auditor mentioned 2 areas that we cannot stop doing: planning and training. And mayor, auditor, and chairman to meet and discuss the scope of work further and discuss with BT and report back to committee.
Need a motion to accept the committee report. Mr. Lipson.
Motion to accept.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the committee report, say aye. Those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Any nays? Committee report is accepted. Legislation.
First reading for Resolution 14, 2020. A resolution approving expenditures made by the auditor's office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of Resolution 14, 2020.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2020-039. An ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 229 Howard Street rezone, which previously was zoned R2 single family medium density to R4 duplex triplex.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of ordinance 2020-039.
Mr. Schindeldecker, second. Questions or comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2020-45. An ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 701 to 807 Adams Street, as well as 700 to 714 Putnam Street rezone, which previously was zoned M2 multiple family residential district to R4 duplex triplex high density residential district. Second reading for ordinance 2020-046, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay.
First reading for ordinance 2020-047, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or the service director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to apply with the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Airport Grant Program and if awarded, enter into an agreement or agreements for the runway 725 rehab project number 35293200, as well as the rehabilitate taxiway A project number 35293400, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Because this requires us to spend no money, it actually helps us potentially bring in some money, I would move the council's statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2020-047 be given its second and third reading.
Mr. Greeno, second. All those in favor of suspending the rules and giving the ordinance its second and third reading, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
and Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
I guess you get to do it twice.
twice?
The rules are suspended and the clerk will give it the second and third reading.
Ordinance 2020-047, ordinance 2020-047.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of ordinance 2020-047.
Mr. Palmer, second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
and Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2020-048, an ordinance authorizing the service director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a contract with Buckeye Pumps for repairs and/or a replacement pump for the Bright Road Pump Station without the need for formal bidding and advertising pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 735.051 and declaring a real and present emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2020-048.
Mr. Greeno, second.
Don't we need to suspend the rules?
Nope. Requires one.
It is-
Requires one reading.
Oh,
Yeah. According, because it's a
It only requires one reading, but it's got to pass by 2/3 vote.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
Mr. Thomas. Hi, buddy. One question, why Buckeye Pumps?
Because we use them for all the other pump stations. They do good work, they're quality, they are a licensed contractor, they're one of the closer ones around.
Greeno.
If we actually go with the people that we bought the pumps from, they don't have a place in the state where they fixed it. So we'd actually have to ship it to Washington State to get them repaired. So Buckeye Pumps, the people that the sewer department prefers to use. We've used them before. The only issue we've had this year, why this issue came up, we had some issue with the power cords out there. It caused some issues with the pumps. And because of the size of the pump station out there and the size of the pumps, it costs a lot more to fix them. So to fix the two, it's going to take us over the threshold with the bidding. So that's why I need this, so that I don't have to bid it and we can get it out there. The other thing is, the other problem with pumps is to figure out what you have to do to fix it, you have to take it apart to figure out what's wrong with it. So we have to send it there, they have to take it apart, and then they can say, okay, it'll cost this much to fix it. So right now, it's down there in pieces, so that they can give us the quote. It was too much, so now we're here asking for that. So it'd be nice not to have to go pick up the parts and take them somewhere else, to have them put it back together for us. If that makes sense.
Mr. Hellman.
If while you're here, I didn't catch in here what the cost is. Do you know the cost yet?
I do not know what the cost was for that one. I know that we already had one repaired this year, and it was about, going off the top of my head, I think about $30,000 to fix it. I don't know if this one has the same issues as that one does, or what the problem is with it.
Okay.
I just know that it's going to be enough that it's going to take it over the $50,000 limit.
Mr. Wobser.
So are we essentially approving a blank check?
Yep.
Well, no, because the money's still going to have to come out of the sewer department's fund for the repair of the pump.
True.
So you're saying that we can use them. The sewer department knows what the cost is. I personally don't.
Okay.
To clarify that. So they said it was going to be over 50,000. We talked to Ginger at the auditor's office. She said this would work from the accounting standpoint, the audit standpoint, but I do not know what the total was. They didn't tell me what it was. I just know we took it over to 50.
I mean, I understand we have to get it fixed,
Right.
but I mean, what if we find something, what if the thing has to be scrapped? I don't know. I'm trying to think worst case scenario here. We've given you the ability to do pretty much whatever you need to do here.
I can help you if you want, Brian.
Mr. Stashek?
I apologize, I don't recall the exact figure, but I think it's in the $30,000 range. But in addition to this, we recommended to the department that when we do the annual bidding for our annual vendors, that this be included as part of that, so a pump doesn't end up down at a place being torn apart with this type of expense in the future without us having at least an opportunity to bid labor rates. So, yeah.
Any additional questions or comments?
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Russell?
So Brian, so this thing is at Buckeye right now, torn apart,
Yes.
and so then they have the capacity or the ability to work on it quickly. What's their time frame on completing the work if we approve tonight?
I did not ask that. I don't know if they have to order parts or what that would look like. So I can't answer that. So.
Yeah. So you're not going to...
And then in light of the conversations, the questions from Mr. Wiltshire is, if this thing, so we're thinking this is in the $30,000 range. It puts us over the 50 limit.
If it's in the $60,000 range, are we going to hear back from you saying that, hey, this is a lot more expensive than we expected, or is this one of these things we got to fix this thing regardless?
We have to fix it regardless because this is if our pumps go out and we don't have another pump to put in there, pretty much anything on the east side of town that drains to that pump station, they're out of luck. So I mean, it has to be fixed. We have to have a pump.
Mr. Greeno?
Yeah, this is a very critical pump at the pump station. Like Brian just mentioned, this keeps the whole east side of Findlay sewage flowing into that pump station. With that pump down, you know, if we would lose another pump, I mean, we would be in a critical stage where we'd have to probably go in there with a temporary pump, you know, an above ground pump. So this is a very critical pump that needs to be fixed. And this pricing, and like I say, Buckeye Pump, they have used Buckeye Pump for 20 some odd years. Buckeye Pump is in Galion, Ohio, I believe. Very reputable and very good on repairing stuff. They've repaired stuff for us for years, and their turnaround is usually pretty decent. So, it's, like I say, it's just a very critical piece of equipment that needs to be fixed right now.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Helm?
Since Randy or Jim, since this is such a critical situation, do we ever stockpile an extra pump? It'd be a bad situation if the east side got flooded with.
Mr. Greeno?
Actually, I believe there are 4 pumps out there, and one of them is a redundant pump. So, I think 2 of the pumps are in operation now, Brian, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So right now you've got 2 of the pumps that need to have work on them. So you're kind of at a critical point where we need to get this done ASAP. But normally under operating procedures, you would have 4 pumps. 3 of them would be working. The one is a redundant pump.
Any additional questions or comments?
Basically, just timing has been bad that the pumps are down at the same time. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wolfson.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Being 2/3 in the affirmative, the ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2020-050. An ordinance authorizing the service director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into all required agreements or documents in order to receive CARES Act grant funds to be utilized at the city of Findlay Airport and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2020-050 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of suspending the rules of council, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wolfson.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
And Mr. Russell.
Aye.
The rules of council are suspended and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2020-050, ordinance 2020-050.
Mr. Hellman.
Move for approval of ordinance 2020-050.
Mr. Hellman makes it. Ms. Warnicki, second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wolfson.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. Any old business? Mr. Russell.
We had previously scheduled a planning and zoning committee meeting that would be virtual for, I think it was the 14th at 12 o'clock noon. Due to the inability to be able to host it at noon because another meeting was ongoing, instead I would like to make that planning and zoning committee meeting start at 11 a.m. on the 14th. Once again, it will be a Zoom meeting. And if there's a nod of the head of the P&Z board members, we will go 11 o'clock a.m. on May 14th. And that will be a virtual meeting.
Any additional old business? Mr. Slack.
I'm not sure if this would be under old business or not, and it's probably a ridiculous question, but regarding funding, we've got the bike lane coming up, third reading next meeting, and I just wondered, has the state of Ohio with issues with funding, is that going to be a problem at all?
Mayor?
That project will not be an issue. I was going to mention in my report, you'll notice that the ODNR Nature Works grant application was removed. That is because they have suspended that program. So they are going through, and many grants are being suspended where there's not going to issue any funds this year, and then they'll start applications again next year based off of funding. That project through ODOT is going forward.
Thank you.
Any other old business? New business? Mayor?
Well, somebody else can go first if you guys would.
Oh, you go ahead.
All right, I have a number of items. First of all, my apologies for flooding your email inboxes. Hopefully the things I've been sending have been beneficial. I think it's good for you all just to be informed of kind of some of the information that we're receiving from various community organizations. Hopefully I have not looked this week if the state has updated their website with the updated unemployment figures, but that's a great resource that they're now making available by county and are updating on a more regular basis, so that's very beneficial. I sent an email out this afternoon just kind of as an FYI. Obviously everything is, I don't want to say fluid right now, but many things are changing quite rapidly. So I'll try to kind of keep you abreast and as we get more information. But one good piece of information last night coming out of the Treasury Department, as I had mentioned at our past couple of meetings, the CARES Act funding originally was just going to be able to be utilized for reimbursable COVID direct expenses, which fortunately we have had minimal through the city of Findlay. The Treasury did issue last night that they are being a little more lenient on that and continuing to expand it. So spoke with Senator Portman's office today as well as the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, and they provided information that it looks like we may be able to use those funds towards the payroll expenses related to police and fire and emergency services, as well as I believe that Hancock Public Health will most likely be able to get some of those funds. And then they did, which I am still digging into a little bit more, mention that there's an opportunity to provide small business assistance and some other things that we can correlate to the fact that they were shut down by state order. So as I get more information, we'll certainly be pushing that out, speaking very regularly with the Alliance and the Downtown Business Associations, and many other businesses are going to be receiving some resources, both from Hancock Public Health, some local banks, and different organizations that are really trying to step up to make sure that our businesses bounce back as fast as possible, and that we're doing everything we can to get creative and work with them. As the federal funding provides some help, we are going to step up locally to do what we can as well. It appears right now, and I was on the phone this afternoon with Senator McCauley and just missed a call from Representative Cross, who I know are both working late, that in the Senate it looks like they are proposing that the local government fund formula be used to distribute the $350 million that the state will be receiving that is earmarked for local governments. So we don't know our specific amount. The auditor and I are talking about that, but as we kind of get firmer figures, we'll certainly let you know how we start to move forward and use those funds. But some good news coming out of that the last couple of days. Before I go, I'll pause because that was a lot of information quickly. Any questions on that? All right. You can't see I'm smiling underneath. This is a good news. We are working as well, as the auditor mentioned, to go through the restricted accounts and provide updated budgets. So we'll make sure that you all are able to see that. And I will also forward out the article that I had shared with the auditor regarding the lawsuits and some of that information. It's an interesting read. That course is lawsuit is originating out of Cleveland right now. Just wanted to again mention the library parking lot. I know you guys received information and it's been out publicly, and just wanted to let you guys know that obviously we're always trying to look for ways to improve parking in the downtown areas, and so that was a good win that we're excited to hopefully have happen if it gets warm enough here soon for being able to lay that pavement. And appreciate any questions you have on that. And if you see other projects, to let us know where collaborations like that can occur. I wanted to clarify one thing with the churches. You guys probably saw last week that I sent out a letter to churches under the state orders. Churches and religious gatherings have been exempt from all closure requirements and mass gathering requirements. Obviously, our religion, freedom of religion is really important, and so they have not been able to restrict that. However, many of our business churches, I had reached out to them back in March and said, hey, while we're seeing how this moves through our community, it would be really wise to limit your services and see how we can make sure we're keeping our community safe until we know a little bit more. Thankfully, we haven't seen the impact locally that was predicted. And so after speaking with the public health commissioners and receiving many calls from churches that were saying they were looking to begin having services and Bible studies and things of that nature again, we wanted to provide some guidance. So that's what we did, sent out a letter just letting them know that though they've been able to meet this entire time, and I've appreciated them not meeting and limiting their interactions and finding new ways to connect with their congregations, that if they did choose to meet over the next couple of weeks, that we had some recommendations to help keep their congregation safe. The recommendations, each church has the ability to enforce or not enforce them. I know I've spoke with many churches already. Some are going to continue to be closed, especially those larger ones. But I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of kind of where that came from. Hopefully you guys saw the letter that was sent out. If you're receiving questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I know there's a lot of kind of confusion around it. Please know that they were recommendations. We're trying to make sure we keep people safe and try to get back to life as normal as we can. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that over the next couple of weeks. Any questions on that? All right, I think that was a lot. I think that was it. Any other questions or comments for me in general?
Mayor, I've got a question. If I can go back to your memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
Parking lot, is who, I went through this, I didn't see on there, who maintains that? Who plows the snow? Who cleans it once in a while? All
Yeah.
those kinds of
So,
issues.
It is the county's parking lot, so they're responsible for maintaining and keeping that.
Okay.
But that is where the building was torn down a couple of years ago, and so it just has been sit as a gravel lot, and it's pretty underutilized. They were getting a lot of potholes, and then the sidewalks were also pretty uneven and dangerous, and so there was an opportunity for us to work together, address that. And I know the auditor and I have talked, he has a couple of concerns on things that we need to work through just to make sure that all of our I's are dotted and T's crossed, but from the legal perspective, both from the county and the city, we're in good shape, so we'll work through any issues that the auditor has with that.
Mr. Robson?
Mayor, on the same topic, the thing that came to mind when I read that was that the city employees are doing work on the county property. And I saw where the log director had made a ruling that that was okay. So I guess my question is there ever a line that we would cross where city employees doing work shouldn't be done? So I'm trying to figure out where that line is, or if there is a line. I mean, we ask our city employees to go and do that parking lot. They're going to do that, and it's okay. So is there a line in the sand that we wouldn't cross? So for instance, if you wanted your driveway redone. Bad example, but you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I don't have any specific ones because it's kind of as it arises, as we see opportunities. I think the big thing is making sure that, in this instance, we didn't have a lot of expense. We have these folks that are doing work. We very frequently work with, citizens who bring up concerns related to their sidewalks and trying to be that. So we don't have hard and fast rules. Certainly open to having those conversations. I would say these projects are pretty few and far between. And happy to look at that if that was a concern.
Mr. Russell?
Or Paul.
Oh, sorry. Paul? Mr. Melton?
I think one clear line, and you alluded to it, is if it's private property. And that's not even apples and tomatoes, not even close to apples to apples. No private property gets improved by public employees. This is public property. The cost associated with it, again, is at a very low threshold. We're talking about maybe 2 days worth of work. And the benefits to the public, I think, are enormous. And we have two public partners, the library and the commissioners, that were both willing and ready to pay for all the materials. So instead of having to go through all the time that would be wasted and money to put bids together for this small of a project, the mayor said, what can we do? Well, this is a no-brainer if I've ever seen one. I mean, we have people clamoring for parking downtown all the time, and with the assurances that all the materials were going to be paid for, we put our resources to work. So it's, again, a very low threshold with regard to our cost, and it is a public partner and on public property to benefit the public.
Yeah, Paul, I understand. For me, it wasn't a cost issue. It wasn't a need issue. Yeah, we need parking lots. Yes, the cost was minimal. I understand that. For me, it was just a question about our employees doing work on non-city property. That was simply it.
Right, I agree with you. I think your question about the line, to me, the immediate one was if it's public property. If it's a public partner of ours and it has a very low threshold of our work, then I think those kind of collaborations are what the taxpayers expect us to do. I mean, if we jumped up and down and said, well, we don't know, I gotta do a workers' comp calculation on how much that's gonna cost our workers to be able to partner with you on that, I think the average taxpayer would find that laughable. So, that's why we do it. And we collaborate with the county. We don't always agree with them politically. Obviously, we have, conversations about things, but, they're a good partner, and so is the library. And with as much conversation as there is around parking, like I said, this struck me as one of the biggest no-brainers ever.
Mr. Russell?
I appreciate the collaboration, be it on our software systems between the sheriff and the police or the parking lot. I'll follow up on a conversation, Mayor, I had with you via email, and the one part in this that I am disappointed in is that we don't take a little bit of extra time to look at both parking lots as one and say, do they work in an efficient manner? Do we look at the egress of the parking lots on the quarry, especially now that quarry is 2 ways, and make it work in the best manner? If it's a matter of striping, what's the cost differences? But I'm glad we're going forward. I would just wish we would. We got engineers and an architect as a county commissioner. It shouldn't be too hard to make sure that combined parking lot is functioning as best as it can.
I certainly understand, and did look at it, and because of the formatting and some of the barriers that are in that parking lot, it just didn't make sense to do that right now with the potential development down the road. So certainly understand. One other thing, because it wouldn't be a council meeting or me speaking to you all if I didn't mention the census, which is still going on, still waiting for folks to complete. We are on a great path. We are ahead of where we were in 2010, and I suspect that once we get some of our groups housing quarters enumerated, that we will exceed that. My goal is 90% or higher. We were right around 75% last time, so please make sure to keep spreading the word. And there is a flyover of F-16s that will be happening Thursday afternoon. They'll be flying over just to support our frontline workers. They are coming back on a mission and some training activities, and so they'll be in the area. And so they notified us that they will be doing that. So step outside and look up between 145 and 205 on Thursday. That information has been released to the public as well as the media. And so hopefully we'll have an exciting little moment where we can all be grateful that we live in this great country and great community, and have men and women who are willing to step up for us each and every day. Thank you.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Niemeyer. Motion. Second. Mr. Slout. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay? What? Mark Mr. Hellman down as a nay. Thank you everybody for practicing.
I don't blame you, Dennis.
He doesn't want to go home.
Excuse to get out of the house.
He's been social distance.